Swapan Dasgupta ji. You have 4 minutes, sir. 4 minutes.
Sir, can we?
Some time for him, in case he doesn't
Okay, sir.
conclude.
I have no objection because you have to manage time.
Sir,
You just inform me how
Sir,
much
in
time
the-
you will be giving.
sir, in the 11th century, an Arab traveler called Al-Baruni came to this country. And one of the observations Al-Baruni made was that the Hindus have no sense of history. I think after listening to this debate, I think we have rather an excessive sense of history, because it seems history is only guiding whatever the discussions here are. Sir, it is not merely history, it's also a question of emotion. Why, for example, should I, a person who was born in what in Lok Sabha terms is called the Kolkata South constituency, be concerned about what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir? So the reason for it is very simple. In 1952, we elected a member of parliament from Kolkata South. His concern obviously was Bengal, but one of his passions, and for which he gave his life in Srinagar. His name was Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, who some people consider a very controversial figure. I consider a very heroic figure. And I'm very glad my friend Prasanna Acharya referred to the contribution of Sri Biju Patnaik in the question in 1948, when the case of Kashmir was being so hotly debated and fought over. So we can go on and on about where someone did right and where did someone do wrong. But at today's point, I think it's very important to come that after 70 years, where is the broad consensus that has taken us? And I think there is a broad consensus which has emerged. The first is that democracy in Jammu and Kashmir is not negotiable. Whatever may have been the case from 1952 to 1977 and the aberration of 1987, that will never be repeated, and I think that is the national consensus. So democracy, number one, I think that is a net national gain. The second important thing which has happened is that the idea that we must look at Jammu and Kashmir only through the prism of the Kashmir Valley has disappeared. That we must look at Jammu and Kashmir as one entity which includes Ladakh, which includes Jammu. Sir, some people would say, oh, this is actually communalizing the whole thing. But sir, if, hypothetically speaking, the population of Jammu, for example, was to exceed that of the rest, would we say that their representation should be curbed, that the constituencies should be made in such a way that they will not have the equal rightful share? That, sir, cannot be. We cannot have it both ways. And therefore, it is very important, sir, that we accept the logic of the reservation policy, that people in Jammu who have been deprived for so long, for whatever reasons, I'm not even going into the historical reasons, and there are very good historical reasons to explain it, they have to be accommodated and made equal citizens of India. That wasn't the case, and I think that is another net national gain. The third net national gain, sir, is that for the first time, maybe not for the first time, but certainly in a more concerted way, we are once again talking about the large numbers of people who were made refugees in their own country a very unfortunate process of what might loosely be called ethnic cleansing. We haven't been able to do justice to all the people who left Kashmir, but at least we are no longer taking the fig leaf of saying, oh, they left voluntarily, they were driven out by the governor, all these sort of spurious excuses. Today, that forms the rehabilitation of those people, form a very important part of the national consensus with all sides of the House agree. And finally, sir, on this question of terrorism, there is, despite everything, a national consensus. And the national consensus, which manifested itself at various times, there might be big differences over tactics, etc., is that there has to be zero tolerance. And I think this whole spurious question of we must go to the roots of terrorism, we must go into this, we must go into alienation, we must look at that, we must look at the psycho profile of people. We have got over that. Today there is a national determination, also expressed in the course of the elections, that this cannot go on. And I think people who say otherwise risk swimming against the national tide. They risk actually going against the very sentiments of the people. Whether there is terrorism in Kupwara or whether there is terrorism in Mumbai, we are against all of it. And I think this spurious psycho explanation has to go once and for all. The political determination, and I think we should hold every government, and I hope, sir, the Honorable Home Minister is listening, that there is today a complete determination, a complete backing of your policy to resolutely fight terrorism. Therefore, sir, this is not merely what we are discussing, is in some sense not an international issue. I think sometimes we make a mistake of talking about Kashmir as if it's great international. It is something which is a deeply felt domestic issue which affects people right from Kargil down to Kerala. And it's also not a question of only 3 constituencies in the whole of India. It is. That's in size. But it is something, what happens in Kashmir affects us deeply, and therefore it's very glad that a passionate debate of this nature is actually being held. And I think that national consensus which we have managed to actually forge, and it's important to bring out these strands, will guide us in future. Thank you very much, sir, for giving me the time.
आपको अतिरिक्त समय रूलिंग पार्टी से मिला था, आपने उसका उपयोग किया.